From the front lines of the military to the front lines of business, this is Military to Management. I'm your host, Eamon. Each episode, we uncover how veterans are translating discipline, leadership, and mission-first values into success in today's corporate world. Hey, Nate, thanks for joining us for the Military to Management podcast. Very excited to talk to you today, man. Your story is incredible. And without further ado, let's start off with your military career. Can you kind of walk us through your military background, career? Which branch were you in? What'd you get into while you were in?
Yeah, no, appreciate you having me. So, name's Nathaniel Hall. United States Marine Corps, got out as a corporal. I served from 2008 to 2012, and through that time, I was fortunate enough to do 2 combat deployments to Afghanistan and Helmand Province with 2nd Battalion, 8th Marines. So we're over in Garmshire-Kashte and North Marja for both deployments. So I was originally an infantry marine. So I was a mortarman by trade for the '09 deployment. But the cool thing was you're doing everything. Your regular 0311, doing foot patrols all the way down to mounted operations. And plus, we were the first of our kind to go that far south in Helmand Province. So everyone was figuring it out, even our comms guys and motor T. So it was really unique in that aspect. And then 2011 came around. Well, I should say after that deployment, I went back and I tried out for the Scout Sniper Platoon. So for my 2011 deployment, I deployed with 2-8 Scout Sniper Platoon. Probably had about 30 people in our platoon out of 900 people in our battalion. So it was super cool, super fortunate. You learn to embrace the suck there because 99% of what we did was not sexy, but it definitely taught me a lot about mindset, and it just kind of reinforced everything that the Marine Corps put in you, from boot camp all the way there on. But one thing I do have to say is, with my story, it's become very unique because I didn't join the Marine Corps until I was 21 years old. I was already a junior at Arizona State University when I withdrew and decided enough is enough. College is always going to be there. I'm going to join the Marine Corps because now's the time for combat. So that's exactly what I did. And I'm fortunate because 2-8 was actually the most combat deployed Marine Corps unit there was up until 2014. Unfortunately, slash fortunately, I got everything that I wanted, but people always want to see combat until they see combat, and it definitely created a brotherhood, and it definitely created a strength within me. But at the end of the day, I'm very fortunate to be where I am, to be alive, and have a good foundation moving forward. So appreciate it.
Incredible story, man. And that sounds like you got everything you wish for and some. Uh, those deployments are kind of legendary in the Marine Corps. So appreciate you contributing and being a big part of that. As far as like takeaways and lessons and values that you took from your time in the Marines, like can you kind of talk to us about what some of those lasting impacts were that you're able to carry forward into your current career?
Yeah, no, I always go back to embrace the suck. And I chuckle at that because I remember when I went to college after the Marine Corps, I used embrace the suck throughout a presentation in public speaking, and the teacher was like, "Oh my God, what are you doing? You're not supposed to be saying that." I'm like, "What? Embrace the suck?" So that's kind of why I'm chuckling right now. But that's probably the first and foremost. Nothing is going to be as worst, as your worst time in the Marine Corps. Whether it was a firefight, just the 125-degree sun in Afghanistan, or the fact that I had nowhere to sleep for 3 months in Afghanistan. I didn't even have a cot because we were in no man's land. So I go back to embrace the suck because guess what? It goes back to the SEALs. The only easy day was yesterday type thing. And if you're able to kind of put yourself in, I work in corporate America now, so it's a lot different than it was in the Marine Corps. But if I have a scenario that I run into, all I have to do is I take a deep breath, and I like to say SILS. Stop, look, listen, smell. And why I say that is because that's a huge thing in the Marine Corps infantry, even Scout snipers, is you stop. take a deep breath. Look, hey, maybe relook at the email or at the position that you're in. Take another deep breath and figure out your next course of action. Listen, hey, you're doing reconnaissance at that point in time. Maybe you just have to shut up and listen to the person who's talking or the snare that you're in. And then smell is just something that I just say, hey, after you take that deep breath and you look around, reassess the situation, go ahead and be, peaceful with your next statement, whether it's going to be verbal or it's going to be, some physical communication cue. But that's what I always tell people is, hey, and plus I think that's, for any relationship, sometimes it's like, hey, stupid, just shut up and listen. And I would probably say those are my top two. But the third one is, being around some officers, and it's a very interesting, world. Unfortunately, I feel like officers have ingrained themselves in a very good way in that transition period where a lot more enlisted men and women have struggled. And I first came across that at PwC, in the Big Four, in consulting, where officers were very good at talking about their military service, and the enlisted folks who most likely did a lot more at that point in terms of combat and everything else didn't want to talk about that. And that's the one thing and why I bring that up is now I tell people is you have to learn and embrace your story. And that's something that I learned very quickly from the officer community. But at the end of the day is, hey, you're going to have good and bad leadership. And it goes back down to the fact of remember those bad leaders. Take that with you on how you'd want to change things. But then when you have good leaders, think about some of the things, maybe emotional intelligence, empathy, or just motivating people and, rallying up the team. Think about some of those characteristics they had and take it with you. Those, I would say, are the top three. But I also want to add a fourth. Never forget who you are and where you came from. Don't compare yourself to other people. That's probably the hardest part. I had a lot of good friends who were Green Berets of 20 years. Invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan. And I would look at him like, wow. And he'd always say, Bubba, you're a lot younger than I am. I was like, obviously, thank you. And he would always tell me, don't compare yourself to other SEALs or Green Berets, because he's like, most people at your age, doing what you've done, they've just gone through a pipeline. They've gotten whatever tab that they have, but they haven't seen combat like you have. And that's the difference with a lot of people. They're like, times have changed. Yes, they did a lot of cool training, it's all badass, but at the end of the day, look at your stack, listen to your heart, and just remember, don't compare yourself to other people, because stuff's cool, but the biggest and most badass experience is that trial by fire. So that was something that I learned, a little bit after I was transitioning into the civilian world, after I was already at PwC and stuff like that. You do a lot more networking events with veterans, and you're just always comparing yourself to the next person, and the next piece of advice is don't do that. Love yourself, be proud of what you did, learn to tell your story with conviction and courage and emotion and happiness, but at the end of the day, you are you, and I want to say it, you're going to be a unique snowflake, and embrace it.
Great, great advice, and super applicable to, pretty much anybody getting out. The transition can definitely be tough. And you have like an interesting story because you were in college, you went into the Marines, and then, you transitioned out. So can you kind of walk us through like the steps that you took to transition out and what that path was like for you?
So that last part, because like my pardon, my Malinois is coming in now. You're basically saying because of my unique background, you'd like to hear a little bit about that transition. But what was that very last part?
Just like walk us through like what it was like transitioning out, because you obviously had some college,
Yeah.
before you went in, and then you went to one of the big four, and you had a good consulting career up to where you are now. So walk us through like what that transition was like, so we can get some perspective on it, and then yeah.
One thing I learned about the transition that I was very grateful for, in comparison to other brothers and sisters who maybe didn't have the same upbringing, is I was fortunate. I was surrounded by a lot of love with my parents. Played a lot of sports. Grew up in a great town. Um, Used to play GI Joes, cops and robbers, and military growing up with some walkie talkies, this and that. But I realized upon the transition that was probably one of the biggest differences for some of my other brothers who didn't have that support system and that love that I had. And I'm very grateful for it. So I would say that's kind of what initiated it. But at the same time, it was going back to college for me. It was easy. But the one thing I learned from leaving Arizona State, I did not want to go to a Division I school. And what I mean by Division I, the 20,000, 30,000, 40,000 people schools, because I was just another name on a number. Well, actually, not even a name, a number on a Scantron. And I couldn't do that. I couldn't learn that way. I couldn't, raise my hand in a 400 or 500 person class. Not that I was ashamed. It was just wouldn't be able to hear, wouldn't be able to take it in, and I'm not sitting front row in a class like that because that probably would get my anxiety pumping. So what I learned is let's go to a small Division III school where there's 20, 25 people in the classroom, and I can raise my hand and ask questions whether they're silly or not. But that was probably the second biggest factor. But I would say the third was having a game plan. I got injured in 2011 in Afghanistan after an incident with our scout sniper platoon in 2-8 North Marja. Very fortunate. It's where we got the Purple Heart. One of my boots actually got the Navy Cross from that incident, and, a couple Bronze Stars throughout it. So after that, I thought I was going to be able to operate again. They gave me the choice of going back home, and I'm like, screw that. I'm staying. Yeah, that sucked. Sergeant Major sat me down real quick after 3 weeks at Wounded Warriors in Camp Dwyer and was like, Hall, love what you did, badass stuff, true Marine, but what good is a scout sniper if you can't hear shit? And I was like, roger that. So he's like, I'm going to restrict you to base. So I helped out with everything, not just the person I was. I was a cook, I was in motor T, I was, doing stuff for scout snipers, sitting in the COC. But I started mapping out my exit right then and there. Started looking at all the schools. So when I got back, my dad and I were going to use post-deployment leave and start looking at, I think it was about 4 or 5 schools. Granted, some of them were for playing college soccer because I played college soccer before that. I wanted to go back and do it again, which was great, but a terrible idea because I ended up having 4 more knee surgeries. So I would say having that clear, concise, actionable plan is what really helped. And then the next step is when I was in school, is I tell everybody, find yourself a damn mentor. I went to ementor.com, didn't love talking about myself when I got out in 2012. Created a profile and about me, shared my story. She reached out, loved everything that you had to say, would love to help you throughout your transition. First off, let's set up a Zoom call so we can talk about creating a resume with Zoom. So she walked me through everything, and quite frankly, we still talk to this day. She just made a career change as well to where she's doing, a little bit of mental health counseling, and that's turning into a little bit into a lot of it. So I would say, find a mentor who can help you with the resume and your transition, because once you have a solid resume, then you can start looking for that career path. And to me, that was everything. I didn't know how to translate O3 Dum Dum and Pew Pew on paper, so did that, and then the best thing about a mentor is you're starting from a shotgun method of what you want to do when you grow up, and then you're going to start keyholing later on. So for me, that was important because I think I had 3 different avenues. Cybersecurity was not the first one. I had business intelligence. I was actually going to be a licensed mental health clinician. I actually got accepted to a graduate school in Boston, and then cybersecurity. And then it wasn't until I stumbled across cyber when I was at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. And then there, I was literally exposed to everything. I could pick kind of anything I wanted to do. When it came to uniformed police or criminal investigator training program, I saw it all. I was given a government vehicle, had an amazing mentor who was also a Marine, and got to do it all. And I stumbled across this forensics class. And the forensics class is what introduced me to cybersecurity. Spoke to the teacher afterwards, and I was like, wait a second. I did a lot of physical security in the Marine Corps. That's basically what my job was, along with everything else. Um, Reconnaissance, stop points and everything like that, and foot mobile patrols. So I was like, wow, and communications and this and that. And this is information security, so I could take physical security information. I was like, huh. And he's like, oh yeah, this is huge. So I went back to my barracks room and started brainstorming my actual next course of action. So I was like, I have zero exposure or experience in cybersecurity, so I need to do that. I was like, I'm willing to work for as much as 20, well, as much as they pay me, but $20 an hour, and it got to the point is I'm willing to work for free. And that's what a lot of veterans don't understand. A lot of veterans get out and they are entitled as hell. And you just have to realize, hey guys, I love what you did. I will always support you, but the world doesn't know you shit. You got to go out there and take it. And what that means is you got to come up with a course of action, but you also have to be willing to work for free if you want that exposure. And I was going to do an internship after the fact I graduated, but then a recruiter reached out to me and he's like, hey, I have an opportunity for you for $20 an hour at Analog Devices in their security operations center. And I was like, yes, yes, say no more. I'm done. I'll do that. Contracted for a year, and then thanks to my exposure at Fallacy, I basically went back to the barracks room and said, "Hey, I need to figure out how to get into grad school because I need more exposure." So that's when I used my benefits of going back and saying, "Wow!" So I had my GI Bill. So now let's look into voc rehab because everyone's talking about it. So utilized voc rehab to go to Northeastern University, which was top 10 school at the time. And that was a little bit different because I was the dumbest kid in class. I was starting all over. But the cool thing was I was working full time and going to school at night slash online. So it was really cool. I got to ask a lot of questions in class. I got my homework that I would either do at work for an hour, whether it was during a lunch break or towards the end of the day. It really translated into what I was doing. So I was able to see the ROI right away, which was really cool because a lot of people probably wouldn't be able to do that. And the last piece of advice I would say through that transition is your network. Your network is everything. You hear like your network is your net worth, or it's not who you know, it's who knows you. Many different things, but at the end of the day, is you have to build meaningful connections. None of this bullshit connections, and quite frankly, I think the world is getting sick and tired of people reaching out without a message on LinkedIn, zero freaking value, and just because you're a veteran, you think I'm going to go ahead and click accept. No. How are you going to add value to my life? First off and foremost, take a minute, look at my profile, try to find a connection between you and I, and utilize that. Use that as a pressure point. Let's go. That's probably the best piece of advice I can do is also attend your local networking events too. Boston was huge. Through the Mass Fallen Heroes, I met a big community out there, and then people still go to the point. I think it's the third Thursday of the month, something like that. It could be totally different now. But you're going to have all walks of life. And it's super cool because I got Mike Pettit. Shout out to him. Awesome Marine Corps officer. He actually is a Mustang, which to me is the most respected rank in the Marine Corps. Went back to Boston University afterwards, so that's why Boston was a huge place in his heart. And he really kind of established what we did at the point for networking. So I'm very appreciative of that. So yeah, that's what I would say is when it comes down to your network, truly utilize it, make it meaningful. And again, write email intros, write LinkedIn intros because we don't know who you are. And we do appreciate you. But guys, we have our lives. We have families. We have dogs. We have our 9 to 5 or we're traveling. So again, just make it as easy as possible on us and we're here to help.
Love it. Such good advice. I like how I like your path, going back to school, taking a job where you can learn. Like I've done those things as well. And I think that hits home for me, especially because, what's better to get paid while you're learning a skill that you're going to continue to develop over time.
Yep.
Sensational advice. Can you kind of walk us through like what you're currently doing or your path to where you're at? I know you had a couple like nice career jumps, and you're in a really good spot now. So tell us a little bit about that and where you're at now.
Yes, so now I'm at a company called Pondurance, and we've been around for over 15 years, and we're a managed security service provider, founded out of Indianapolis. And what I love is I work in the digital forensics incident response space, so we're one of the top names there. Because other than that, I probably would have never heard of Pondurance, which is a shame. But because we do a lot of incident response work with insurance carriers, insurance brokers, and law firms, we're really able to elevate what we do, because what we do is huge. It's meaningful and impactful because we are a managed detect and response company. So we are a managed security operations center. So we manage, environments, and we manage the security posture for a lot of middle market organizations as well as enterprise clients. But then on top of that, we have a whole consulting practice where we do governance, risk, and compliance, to proactive threat hunting, to red team, purple team, to pen testing, to insider threat, and our forensics engagements. So that's huge. But how I got in this path was basically I was at PwC. I got exposed to a lot of things, and getting exposed to a lot of things allowed me to kind of figure out what I wanted to do within cybersecurity. Started off doing security operations center to governance, risk, and compliance, all the way to insider threat, to a little bit of this, a little bit of that. But it wasn't until I got exposed to the Equifax breach that I really got to see both the reactive and proactive side of IR. And from there, I was like, man, okay, I got to figure out how to get in there. So I was just really knocking on doors at PwC, not making a lot of effort. But then finally, they're like, hey, we'll send you to a SANS course so you can get certified in XYZ. That's great. That's awesome if that's really all I have. But then a CEO reached out to me from a DFIR firm and was like, love to have you. He's like, I'm a Navy vet, you're a Marine Corps vet. Freaking love it, Semper Fi, dude. But also, I think everything that you have is going to translate nicely into this field. And I just busted my ass. And I do want to add one thing. So, my first job is I still, at the time, learning how to navigate corporate America. And the first thing I learned is know your worth. But again, don't expect you're going to make this huge pay jump because you only have a couple years experience. And that's probably the one thing that ticks me off the most. Just because we have a vet title, people think we deserve, 80K for a first job. I always tell everyone, I'm like, you're high. Like, you think you deserve that? Again, go back and pat yourself on the back, love thyself, but then let's be realistic. My first job was, I was fortunate. My After $20 an hour, I worked up to 70K, which was amazing. But I was willing to settle for a 55K level entry job. But what I learned with that at that transition was I got brought in to do a job, did it very well, got promoted, and my roles and responsibilities expanded tremendously. Hours expanded tremendously, 16 weekends in a row. Waited 3 weeks or 3 months to bring it up, and then I brought it up to leadership. Hey, I'm still making the same salary I got brought in as, except everything expanded. What are the next steps? And after time had passed, fell on deaf ears, and I found another opportunity making more money that I was rightfully should have been making at the last company. And I learned real quick, when the CEO comes after you, said, hey, we're going to go ahead and give you X, Y, Z. That's where you learn you didn't appreciate my value back then. So thank you, but no thank you. And that's when I kind of learned to jump. It wasn't jumping because of way more money off the bat. It was because they offered me money that I was rightfully owed. And then moving forward, I wanted a different experience. So when I went to Booz Allen, that was a little bit more of the business development experience. Never thought I'd go business development, but I realized I could use my cybersecurity hands-on experience to talk to clients, to promote our internal services, to build out an incident response retainer program. So that was a lot of fun. It was a little bit difficult on how I wanted to utilize my personality in that transition, but that was just hey man, you gotta live through a couple awkward moments of being like, oh, I shouldn't have said that. Got it. Okay. Lesson learned. Or, hey, that actually worked out very well. But you just gotta figure out what works best for you. But I also do want to share with folks who are listening is I also got my first kick in the butt. I'm not going to say the other thing because we're going to be politically correct. But I learned on what it was like having the worst boss ever and having to navigate that. And that was very tough because, again, coming from a loving family, my mom was the breadwinner. I would lean on her, but she also knew my personality was very Marine Corps like, where, sometimes I wish we could take people to the tree line, but you can't. So you just have to go, okay. And I realized very quickly that, this person having a lot longer experience in corporate America than I did and coming with a legal background, they knew how to document things better than I did, and they played the game ultimately better than I did. And ultimately, it forced me to have to leave because the home that I joined was no longer the home that I loved. And plus I lost leaderships. I was on 5 leaders within 3 years, and that's where I want people to. Hey, red flags are going to start popping up, and then that's when you're going to have to start polishing up your resume and start looking elsewhere. And if it can happen to me, it can sure as well happen to you because I didn't think it would happen to me like that. But again, I didn't play the game as well, but there really wasn't much to be played. And that's where I realized I was kind of screwed either way it looked. And I want people to have a plan, to have, contingency plan, have a plan, to have a plan, to have a plan. And that's why I always say have your resume good to go and have 2 resumes. I always have one for the technical side of IR, and then the other one is for senior leadership within cybersecurity as a whole. Because I can tell the story and I can map it back to whatever the job description is. But I kind of tell that story in that transition of, again, we're learning every day, every week, every month. Every job is going to be different. You're getting older, you're getting wiser, you're getting more experience, but don't ever think it can't happen to you. And it's nice because you're finally starting to see karma catch up to that individual. But man, I didn't lose sleep over it, but I definitely talked about it more than I wanted to the last year that when that happened. But I think it was more so because it was so new to me on how I wanted to navigate it and how I want to do this and that. And that's where I just tell everybody lean on mentors within your industry, lean on your original mentor that you use to help you navigate this. And then for me, I couldn't be any luckier. I am in a great position at Ponderance where I have great leadership from the top down. So that's another thing that you want to do when you look at companies. You're looking at the leadership as well. You're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. I have a mentor. He's actually an Air Force vet. He's bought and sold multiple managed security service providers. He was Michael Dell's right-hand man at RSA for many, many years, leading their whole strategic and growth arm within not only cybersecurity, but IT and everything else. So I was able to see that and like, wow, I have access to him. That's amazing. But also at the same time as my boss, she is super amazing. She's worked for this guy for 15 years. So I was able to identify real knows real, but obviously you're super successful and have a beautiful family, but you wouldn't be with this guy for 15 years if he wasn't an amazing leader. There's something going on here. I want to be a part of it because I felt like, you know what, I'm going to be selfish. It's my time. I'm tired of seeing all my boys have great leaderships. I want great leadership now. And it's really cool because it's not micromanaging. Nobody in corporate America should be micromanaging you, and if they are, you should look to get out because that's just weak sauce, and that's just a sign of a weak leader. And that's the thing is you have to have your left and right lateral limits for yourself. And I talk about left and right lateral limits all the time. Is if it crosses that threshold, something's wrong or something's going on. It's like a proximity alarm. But again, I'm very fortunate to be here. I'm still in business development, but what I did for this position is I negotiated a hybrid role, but I made sure I got it in writing because most people don't get it in writing and they're like, oh, I'm promised this hybrid role, but I'm not doing a hybrid role. I'm just doing business development. What's going on here? Well, they meant well, but again, they needed you to do BD more. and you never had anything written so you could go back to it. And so for me, I do a hybrid role of business development, which I love because I get to travel to London next week, last minute, for only 3 or 4 days. But again, I don't really care to stay past 4 days this trip because I want to get back to the family. But where else could you do that? I'm going golfing Wednesday, and it's not just golfing for fun. It's for work, and we're networking for a great cause, Cyber Victims Hotline. But also, you're building those relationships, talking about Honduran. So there's a lot of business there. But I also got to that point to where I can do that stuff, which is amazing. But at the same time, I don't want to do that all the time. So I can actually help out with scoping calls, help out with incident response calls, and just also, wherever they need me, or just hey, if you need backup, I'm there. Got it. Or just to talk cybersecurity and be nerdy, down. So I'm very fortunate now at a point in my career where I can do that. I will say in the next couple of years, it's going to be interesting on what my next steps would be because I thought I wanted to be a CISO, get that hands-on experience. But at the end of the day, how I've driven my career is being a CISO is cool, but is it really the end-all be-all or continuing down the path that I am on more of the business development side? Because to me, that's been a lot more genuine.
Nate, for anybody who's kind of interested in cybersecurity, what are some of the major shifts or trends happening in the industry right now, and how's that affecting your business?
Yeah, everybody loves the word AI. Yeah, cool, whatever. It's there. Everybody uses it in school nowadays, I'm sure, so that's unfortunate. There's no hard work anymore. But I will say AI has definitely probably ramped up the need for more cybersecurity experts because they're utilizing AI and machine learning to go after organizations through phishing attacks. They're definitely getting a lot more sophisticated, but then there are also people who aren't as smart to do that stuff and build out code. They're able to utilize AI to build malware. So it's definitely become interesting, but again, it doesn't we shouldn't lose sleep over that because we have security operations centers that have tools that have machine learning and AI built into it. What's truly happening now is people are not doing the basics. And again, somebody who has a military mindset, you start off with the basics wherever you go, and then you build upon that. And that is huge because people don't realize that's the foundational leverage right there. So I would say if you're starting off now, you don't need schooling. I will say if you have the technical experience, which 95% of the people do not. But the five people who build out code and are ethical hackers and study and threat hunt, they are the rare breed in this life in this cybersecurity community in the U.S. who are probably going to be the backbone one day. But you don't need that. And what I tell people is go back to school, get an entry level job, but again, you have to tailor that resume to that entry level job. Reach out to whoever the recruiter is or some of the cybersecurity staff on LinkedIn with a message. But I will also say there are websites out there, and some of those websites, like what is it? Let me think about it. One website I really loved. It was a cybersecurity learning site. Oh God, I had it forever. It was Cybrary. So Cybrary is probably one of my favorites, and then like tryhackme.com and stuff like that are the ones that I would definitely recommend. But why I love Cybrary is I even had it for years after school and stuff, just because it's like college. It's like it was at Northeastern. It gives you these hands-on labs, so you're learning as you go, but then you can kind of drive your career path within Cybrary whether you want to work in ethical hacking or governance risk and compliance or security operations or incident response. They have all those career paths, which I love. So from there, it's kind of just figuring out what you want to do within cybersecurity, but also just network. Attend cybersecurity events and figure out, hey, how do you get into your path? Because I also tell people this is very overlooked. Be a sysadmin. be a help desk support analyst. Start there, because once you understand the flavor of the operating systems, how to work with people, how to troubleshoot, that's going to put you better off of just coming out, going like kind of doing what I did. Because for me, it was 2 years as a swift kick in the butt. But luckily, I had that job at Analog Devices. But I tell everybody, if you or a networking guy, if you understand networking protocols and you can kind of get some hands-on experience, man, you're light years ahead already. And then you can transition to cyber.
Nate, if for your role right now, and for Pondurance, like if there was one thing that was holding you guys back that you could fix, like with a snap of a finger, what would that be? What's like a big thing that would unlock the next level of business growth for you guys?
Honestly, this is gonna sound corny, but if we were able to snap our fingers, I'd probably just say more exposure to the brand, so brand awareness, and it's something that I'm working on. Is getting more webinars with our incident response team, bringing kind of doing what we're doing, bringing on lawyers that we work closely with, or cyber brokers, cyber carriers, and really posting it to LinkedIn and sharing it with all the folks who are on our contact list. Because right now, it's tough because we are doing organic growth. But if I snap my fingers right now and all of a sudden we got blasted, hey, Pondurance is the best of the best with an incident response, we don't have the manpower to handle all the workload that would come in. So what I really respect about our leadership is we've done organic growth. That year after year growth. And the one thing I see in incident response, everybody wants it now, now, now. So we want that immediate growth. But then what happens? I can't tell you how many firms have kind of given themselves a black eye because they've let people go after wave after wave after wave. So I would say I really like what we're doing, but the thing is, I would love to work more with enterprise level clients because we really have such a good team and we invested on the back end. We're not investing on the front end. Hey, look at our sexy tools. We have engineers that work on automating a lot of stuff, AI, machine learning over time. And what I really wish every enterprise client would know, don't go with the big four. You're just wasting your money. You just want the brand. Okay, cool, got it. But what I love is when it comes down to our price model, we have enterprise level clients, but they don't realize that they can get a full managed security operations center for as low as 7,500 for like 20 endpoints, which is amazing. And it also comes with 5 free hours of incident response. And it's interesting because a lot of people like to claim they're the best, but it's like, well, you also have to do X, Y, Z. And what's the point of being a managed service provider if you can't do insurance work because you're not on an insurance panel? How do you get on an insurance panel? Well, it's very freaking hard because you have to prove your worth and your salt to them that you guys can, and they give you test cases through business email compromises. Can you guys do this quick, effective, and well? Cool, got it. Well, we're still going to make you do those for the next year or next 6 months to 12 months to make sure you're good at it and make sure you have processes around it. But that's what I would say is we don't bite off more than we can chew, which I appreciate. But I will say I can't wait for us to grow even more and to get the brand out there just because everything that our team does, they do it well. But again, I wouldn't want us to get our name out there too quickly because it would overload everyone. We're not here to do that. We want some work-life balance, and there's going to be moments you have to work weekends, but until then, let's just keep that organic growth.
Responsible growth, not grow, 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 grow. I can definitely appreciate that. All right, just to wrap up, Nate, is there any like final takeaways or things that you want to tell to folks who are possibly getting out of the military or recently got out?
Yeah, I would say have a plan and have a routine. And why I say that, I tell a lot of my veteran buddies, and if they end up listening, they're gonna laugh. But it's first thing you do when you get out of bed. I have a water bottle next to me, and then after that, I go straight to the sink, wash my face, moisturize it, and then I brush my teeth and all that stuff. And why I say you have a routine because there's been too many times it happens to me. You know, hey, maybe I had a rough week, or just, you know, one of those Sundays to Mondays where I'm just laying in bed and I'm like, oh man, I have 10 minutes. Oh shit, I have 10 minutes. And I throw my routine out the door and my whole day is kind of thrown off. But if I'm able to establish a routine, and honestly, it doesn't matter what time you get up as long as you get up within a window. But then if you go straight to that routine, you feel like, oh God, like, okay, I'm so fresh and so clean. You know, if somebody was to answer the door right now, like no bad breath, I look presentable. If I go on camera for work, I look good to go. But also it helps with the mental side of things, and people don't realize that because again, it's happened to me too many times. Nobody's alone out there. Nobody's perfect, but my day gets thrown off, and somehow I'm sitting here 2 hours later. I'm like, why am I feeling depressed? Shit. Okay. And then I go back to the little things. I didn't do things that I normally do that give me that self love, that self care, and that real feel good mentality. So I would say establish your routine is one of the biggest things. And just go back to realize real quick that you need to build your own tribe. You didn't lose a tribe. You're just not part of that tribe any longer. You still have that brotherhood. But then go out there and find another tribe. One thing I did is I joined a local gym. You have group classes, and I started making friends that way. And then that's another way I kind of went about it, and kind of helped out after work activities. I always went to the gym. Hey Nate, how you doing? Or maybe go to a sauna afterwards. So that goes back to routine. And just the last part I would say is, you know, you're special. You rock. You rule. Never ever try to compare yourself to other people. Just be truthful to yourself and to others around you. Love and be proud of your service, and everything else will fall into place.
Love that, man. All right, if anybody wants to look you up, Nate, I know you kind of mentioned a little bit about LinkedIn before, but what's a good way to get in contact with you?
Yes, LinkedIn's gonna be Nathaniel Hall. You'll see my picture and my good old USMC ribbon right here. But yeah, because that has my personal email on there that routes to my inbox. But at the same time, I would say a lot of mutual connections I'm sure are to be had there. And plus, one thing I would even say, my LinkedIn is not perfect, but I'm proud of it. Try to look at other successful veterans' LinkedIn's and kind of mirror yours off theirs. Take a sample size of about 5, work it down to 3, and hopefully you'll be able to leverage it. But yeah, LinkedIn.com/, Nathaniel W. Hall, and go from there.
It's been a pleasure having you on, man. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me and to talk to the listeners, and best of luck going forward. Semper Fi.
Semper Fi, baby.
Thank you to our guest for sharing their journey from the military to corporate leadership. We'll be back soon with more stories of veterans proving that success doesn't end with a uniform. It begins a new mission. This is Military to Management with your host, Eamon.